Very warm good morning, every students. Good morning to everyone. Today we will start the theory of democracy. In the previous class, we talked about what is democracy basically, and what are the types of democracy. What are the approaches that that has talk about democracy, like procedural democracy, substantive democracy, policy-oriented democracy, constitutional and legal democracy, right? So that was the approaches. So these are the four approaches which talks, which analyze the democracy, right? Today we are going to talk about theory of democracy. Theory of democracy means, there's a one kind of democracy, and that has been talked about by different author in a different way, right? So, for example, in previous class we talked about ancient Greek democracy, right? And today we will talk about representative democracy, and we will see that what is a representative democracy, and what is the two view, that is, one is protectionist views of democracy and one is developmental view of democracy. Then we will talk about Marxist perspective of democracy, then the elitist theory of democracy, and after that pluralist theory of democracy, right? So let's start representative democracy. In the last class, we talked about ancient Greek democracy. That was the ancient Athens was the city-state which invented democracy basically in the time of Pericles, right? And that was the golden age of democracy, when democratic institution was established and strengthened, right? In modern nation state, after 16th century and thereafter, democracy was turned in as a representative form, as a representative government. Why it is so? Because Athens was a very small city-state, or entire Athenian Greek city-state was a very small city-state, and participatory democracy, was possible, right? So basically, democracy are two types: participatory, where people directly rule themselves. It is called also direct democracy, right? Where people rule, themselves directly. राइट? ये पहला वेरिएशन है डेमोक्रेसी का, जहां पर सारे सिटीजन लोग पार्टिसिपेट करते हैं, राइट? एंड उसमें खुद वो पॉलिसी भी बनाते हैं, खुद उसको इम्प्लीमेंट भी करते हैं, और खुद जुडिशरी का भी रोल निभाते हैं, राइट? सो yesterday we talked about the Athenian democracy. That was the classical example of direct democracy. Okay, so because people themselves engaged in policy making process and administrating the state, and also executing the law, right? They were holding public offices like legal offices, administrative offices, political offices. So there people rule themselves, and direct democracy is possible in small city state, a small state, simple small state. But when there is a population is big, when demography is big, it is, it is very difficult for everyone to participate, right? Because it's a huge mass, right? So it would be very difficult to implement direct democracy. So there is an alternative that is called representative democracy. The alternative is representative democracy. So see this picture. The people, right, here, just, at the below of this picture, and they are voting and ruling themselves. That is direct democracy. So people voting on certain law, people are voting on certain rules, people taking, holding public offices, right? So all kind of public offices, like administrative offices, like legal offices, like political offices, right? All kinds of offices are taken up by the people themselves, right? And they decides any law through the vote, okay? And they also take participation in deliberation, right? So they also take participation in deliberation, okay? So that is direct democracy. And it is possible in a small state. जब स्टेट छोटा होगा तो डायरेक्ट डेमोक्रेसी पॉसिबल है, क्योंकि लोग कम हैं, तो वहां पर लोग आपस में आकर के लोग बातचीत कर सकते हैं, बहस हो सकती है, लॉ बन सकता है, रूल्स बन सकते हैं, और लोगों को वहां पर चूज किया जा सकता है कि ओके, यू आर सपोज टू टेक द रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी ऑफ legal office, you are the supposed to take responsibility of the administrative offices that can be done in a small state. But when demography is too big, then what is the mechanism? People vote, and elect representative. People vote and elect representative, and this representative, now take participation on the behalf of the people, and they make law, they make rules, they deliberate, right? They also take offices like, finance minister, railway minister, so on and so forth. Okay, so direct democracy is a form of democracy where the leaders, the representatives, are elected by the people, right, through universal adult franchise. Right, so it's clear. I hope it's clear that representative democracy is a form of democracy in which, the leaders, the representatives are elected by the people, right, through the universal adult franchise. सभी लोग उनको वोट करते हैं और फिर अपने अपने रिप्रेजेंटेटिव को चुना जाता है. Okay, so that is representative democracy. So here see, the leader is Hillary Clinton, right? And she's elected, all are elected leader, right? And they are being elected by the people, right? So this is a picture of United States of America. Here you can see, this is a picture of the parliament in which people are elected, right? Right, and they are deliberating, they are participating, they are making law, right, and they are governing the state basically. So in representative democracy, people doesn't participate directly in making law, holding offices, but they elect leaders. The people elect leaders, yeah, their representative, to make the law to to execute the law, and also to manage the collective affair of the state. Okay. The ancient Greek city-state or ancient world, even the medieval world, did not know about the idea of representation, right? It is the only modern concept, and especially developed in Britain, right? So the ancient world knew nothing of representation, right? And if it did not even have a word for it, right? For example, a citizen of Athens, for instance, thought for their democracy as direct democracy and participatory, right? So everyone participated. And if you know that 1/3 population of the Athens only participated in democracy, right? Because women had no citizenship, a slave had no citizenship, foreigner had no citizenship, metics had no citizenship. Okay, so only all equal citizens participated in the collective affair of the state, right? And this, that population was very small. For example, अगर हम population को निकालें कि कितना था, अगर आप पूछेंगे सर कितना था, कोई अंदाजा है? Yes, let me tell you. Aristotle, the father of political science, said that an ideal state must have 5,040 portion, population. The population should be 5,000 around, 5,040. So अगर 1/3 था तो इसको थर्ड से डिवाइड कर दीजिए. One minute, my division, my mathematics is very bad. Let me divide. Yes, 5040 by 3. Okay, so yes, so 1680, right? I think this time division is right. So only 1680, were the people who were allowed to participate and who were the citizen, basically. 1680 citizens थे मात्र एथेंस में, और 1680 तो ठीक है, 1680 लोग तो पार्टिसिपेट कर ही सकते हैं, राइट? तो इतने लोग पार्टिसिपेट एथेनियन डेमोक्रेसी में किया, और ये पॉसिबल है. बट जब पॉपुलेशन 2 लाख 4 लाख 5 लाख हो, और जब करोड़ों में हो, राइट, और इंडिया जैसी कंट्री जैसे अरबों में पॉपुलेशन हो, तो क्या होगा, राइट? Then idea is representative democracy, right? The ancient democracy, which was in which there was around 1680, citizens. This democracy was very exclusive, Athenian democracy, because because citizenship was restricted to women, men only, right? So like 1/3 of like foreigner, slave, women were excluded from the democracy. Representative democracy is very significant in modern time, especially it emerged in 16th century. I told you that 17th century and 18th century, right? So representative democracy signifies that a type of government in which people elect their leaders. Representative democracy में क्या होता है? People elect करता है अपने leaders को. Okay, so it evolved in 16th century in Britain, right? 17th century in Europe, 18th century in the USA, 19th century in Latin America, and 20th century in India, in Asia, including India. So you can see still we have representative democracy. We elect people, right? So we elect MLA, member of Legislative Assembly, members of Legislative Assembly, right? For the state assembly, right? The legislature, and we elect MPs for the parliament, the Lok Sabha, right? So that is the basic component of representative democracy. Okay. In representative democracy, people elect their representatives, okay, and send them to manage the collective affair of the state. वो उनको चुनते क्यों हैं? ताकि वो हमारा जो देश है, जो राज्य है, जो गवर्नमेंट है, वो बना करके हमारे देश को चला सके. ओके, सो इसके एक्सपोनेंट कौन कौन है रिप्रेजेंटेटिव डेमोक्रेसी के? तो जॉन लॉक, if you remember John Locke theory, right? So what John Locke talks about, that people do social contract, right? So in a state of nature, there is no state, but people do social contract and they form government. Right, so that government to serve the interest of the citizen. Okay, government to protect the right to life, liberty, and property of the people. Jeremy Bentham supports the same thing, right? So exponent is John Locke, Jeremy Bentham, Thomas Jefferson. He was American theorist, right? Marquis de Condorcet, Thomas Paine, Edmund Burke, and J.S. Mill were among the best known defenders of representative democracy. ये लोग अगर representative democracy का नाम आए तो आप इनका नाम जरूर लिखें कि they are the best known defender of representative democracy. What is characteristics of liberal, that is representative democracy? Before characteristics, let me tell you that representative democracy is also called liberal democracy. Also known as liberal democracy. Why liberal democracy? So think of John Locke and James Mill, Jeremy Bentham. Right? So the liberal democracy and representative democracy same, right? So liberal democracy के बारे में भी पूछे तो बोलना कि yes, in liberal democracy people elect their leaders, right? In liberal democracy, people elect their leaders to govern the country, right? To manage the affair of the government. Okay. That is liberal democracy. Now come to see the basic characteristics of a liberal democracy. What is the basic characteristics of democracy? So पहले तो ये देखिए कि characteristics में क्या है कि लोग क्या करते हैं, वोट करते हैं. तो लोग क्या करते, वोट इज अ पावर, राइट, वोटिंग पावर, राइट, वोट इज अ पावर, राइट। तो लोग क्या करते हैं, थ्रू वोट अपना पावर डेलीगेट करते हैं, किसको, रिप्रेजेंटेटिव को, राइट। सो इट्स अ डेलीगेशन ऑफ पावर टू द इलेक्टेड रिप्रेजेंटेटिव। पीपल delegate power, delegate मतलब transfer करता है। You remember law, what law says, people give up the right to govern to the elected leaders, right? So the delegation of power, right, it is a delegation of power to the elected representative, right? So the representative democracy is a delegation of power to the elected representative to govern the country, okay? So, and it is an effective method of political performance, because the major masses does not know the rules of the game, the rules of the politics, right? The art of government. Governing is an art. Everybody cannot do it. So elected representative perform all the task of government, right, the task of governing. So it is an effective method of political performance, right? So मास को अगर आप लगा देंगे तो फिर गड़बड़ हो जाएगा, वो पता नहीं क्या करेगा, right? So there is an elected representative which gives effectively implement or effectively deliberate the issue of law, rules, right, public policy. So representative democracy or liberal democracy is an effective method of government. Thirdly, I'm just changing the pattern. Third, you say it is a limited government. It is a limited government. It means the people have right to change the government if government is not working in the favor of the people, okay, right? So in representative democracy, government is a trustee, right, of the people, because people vote on the basis of trust that the elected leader will work for the benefit of all, right? So the government is very much limited. If government doesn't work in the favor of the people, then people has a right to change the government, right? So what is election? Election is an options, right? It is an opportunity to change the government, right? So government cannot be authoritarian, right? अगर authoritarian होगा तो लोग क्या करेंगे, उसको बदल देंगे. Government cannot be aristocratic or a kind of self-serving institution. No. Government has to play a vital role in performing and serving the interest of the people, right? So that is also one of the characteristics of representative democracy. The fourth is rotation of leadership through periodic election. So that is, I already told you that election is the process, election is an opportunity for the people to rotate the leadership. एक बार इस एमएलए को चूज कर लिया, अगर उसने काम नहीं किया तो आपने दूसरे एमएलए को चूज कर लिया, फिर उसने नहीं किया तो आपने तीसरे एमएलए को चूज कर लिया, और ऐसा होता है. So representative democracy gives opportunity to the people to rotate their leadership, right? And election is one of that opportunity. Liberal democracy is also based on rule of law, right? Rule of law, it means all are equal in front of law, equal in the eye of law, right? So there is no discrimination, right, based on race, caste, sex, gender, etc., etc., right? and one person has one vote and one vote has one value in liberal democracy, right? मेरे पास अगर एक वोट है तो एक वैल्यू है, प्राइम मिनिस्टर नरेंद्र मोदी जी के पास एक वोट है तो उनका भी एक वैल्यू है। ऐसा नहीं है कि उनका जो वोट है, एक वोट वो एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी है, मतलब 10,000 या 20-25 लाख है, ऐसा नहीं है, राइट? सभी लोगों के पास एक ही वोट है। So rule of law is very much important in the liberal and representative democracy. Both are same. Representative democracy बोलते हैं इसलिए क्योंकि of course people elect करते हैं leadership democracy के लिए। Liberal democracy भी बोलते हैं क्योंकि ये liberal idea है representative democracy. Representative democracy is a liberal idea, right? Let me write. Idea of liberal political theorist, right? Like theorist का नाम मैंने यहाँ पे लिया है, जैसे जॉन लॉक, जॉर्मी बैंथम, थॉमस जेफरसन, थॉमस पेन, एडमंड बर्ग, जेएस मिल, ये सब का आइडिया को यहाँ पे कलेक्ट करके मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ। So rule of law is very much important in a liberal democracy, right? Representative democracy. Consent of the people is very much necessary. What is right? Vote. Vote is a consent. आप जाकर के वोट कराते हैं, अपनी मर्जी से कराते हैं, जिस पार्टी को, जिस लीडर को आपको मन करता है उसको करके आ जाते हैं। And this consent you give periodically. So consent is very much important in liberal democracy, right? अगर consent नहीं होगा तो वो डेमोक्रेसी नहीं कहलाएगी। डेमोक्रेसी के लिए बहुत जरूरी है कि कंसेंट होना चाहिए। So when you elect leader, of course जब आप इलेक्शन होता है और उसमें कितने सारे लीडर्स इलेक्शन लड़ते हैं, राइट? एक कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी में कम से कम 10, 12, 15 तो होता है, राइट? सो ये अभी की बात है, पहले भी 5-6 तो हुआ करती थी, राइट? आप इलेक्शन हिस्ट्री उठा के देख लीजिए, कहीं का भी कम से कम 5-6 जो लीडर हैं वो जरूर लड़ते हैं, राइट? अभी तो 5, 7, 8 पार्टियां लड़ती हैं, उसके बाद इंडिपेंडेंट जो कैंडिडेट है वो भी लड़ते हैं। तो आप किसको चुनते हैं? आप चुनते हैं जो बेस्ट है, राइट? दैट मीन जो मेरिटोरियस है, जो काम कर सकता है आपके लिए, राइट? सो द रिप्रेजेंटेटिव डेमोक्रेसी इज आल्सो नोन एज रूल ऑफ मेरिट, राइट? In representative democracy, people elect leaders, a qualified leaders, right? A meritorious leaders, a laborious leaders, a leader who can perform, who can deliver, right? So, and who is very much qualified. So the liberal democracy is also known as rule of merit. Okay. Liberal democracy is one of the prudent method to watch over the expenditure of public money. मान लीजिए बजट है, अब बजट की समझ सबको नहीं है, राइट है? सबको समझ नहीं है, बट जो इलेक्शन कंटेस्ट करते हैं, जो पार्लियामेंट में जाते हैं, राइट, they have certain idea of the budget, right? And with the help of the bureaucrat, with the help of a specialist, they keep watch on the public money. जो एक्सपेंडिचर होता है उस पब्लिक मनी के ऊपर वो बहुत अच्छे से वॉच रखते हैं। कौन? आपके रिप्रेजेंटेटिव, हमारे रिप्रेजेंटेटिव, राइट? सॉरी। So representative democracy is a prudent method to watch over the expenditure of public money, domestic and foreign policy. तो ये सबके समझ की बात नहीं है कि डोमेस्टिक पॉलिसी कैसी होना चाहिए, फॉरेन पॉलिसी कैसा होना चाहिए, राइट? और इसके ऊपर जो वॉच रखता है कौन? आपके रिप्रेजेंटेटिव, एमपीज, राइट? एमपीज, एमएलएस, ये सब इसको ध्यान में रखते हैं। एंड ऑल अदर एक्शन ऑफ गवर्नमेंट, गवर्नमेंट के और जितने एक्शंस हैं सबके ऊपर ये वॉच रखते हैं। कौन? आपके रिप्रेजेंटेटिव, हमारे रिप्रेजेंटेटिव, right? So that is also basic features of representative democracy, right? Now you see the eighth point. It is a enlightened delegation and deliberation. That is JS Mill view. JS Mill view कहते हैं कि जो लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी है, यानी रिप्रेजेंटेटिव जो डेमोक्रेसी है, वो एक इनलाइटेंड डेलीगेशन है, राइट? आप जो डेलीगेट करते हैं वो जो लोग हैं, दे आर लॉजिकल, दे आर रैशनल, right? And the representative are your delegated authority, right? From the people. The people delegate power to the representatives. हम जो वोट करते हैं वो क्या करते हैं कि हम अपना जो पावर है, अपना रूल करने का पावर अपने ऊपर, वो हम अपने रिप्रेजेंटेटिव को देते हैं, राइट? एंड दिस इज वेरी मच enlightened delegation, because जो masses cannot rule themselves, right? Because the majority of the masses are, are unaware of the art of government, right? So the representative are a delegated authority from the people. They debate, issue, and make laws, right? They decide who will govern and how on the behalf of the people, right? They ask question in the parliament, right? So they ask question. Okay, what Edmund says that in the parliament, representative does not represent a narrow interest, right? They think about entire nation. They deliberate about the entire nation, because they know, because they are educated, they are rational, right? So their approach is not a narrow. Their approach is universal, right? So that is Edmund perspective on representative democracy. JS Mill का मैंने बता दिया, तो आपको JS Mill, एडमंड और जॉन लॉक को जरूर मेंशन करना है। इन तीनों का नाम बता दिया, अदरवाइज और नाम आपको ऐसे ही लिख देना है, क्योंकि सबका नाम लिखे, सबके बारे में लिखेंगे कि कौन क्या बोल रहा है, तो आपके पास टाइम नहीं होगा, राइट? एंड आई ऑलरेडी एक्सप्लेन्ड द characteristics, the features of a liberal democracy. I hope a liberal democracy is clear. Now see, there are two perspectives on liberal representative democracy. Why we need a representative democracy, liberal democracy? That is why. Why do we need liberal democracy? This is the question. There are two points of view. The one is protectionist. So John Locke and Bentham is the main advocate of protectionist view of representative democracy. They said that state is to protect the right to life, liberty, and property. State is to protect the wealth, protect the rights of individual, the liberty of individual, right? So without a state, the civil liberty and the political civil liberty and the rights cannot be defended, cannot be protected. So state is necessary to protect the right to life, liberty, and property. Okay, state provides security and peace. Remember John Locke. Why do we need state? Because it provides security and peace, right? And it maintains law and order. That is one perspective of state. The other perspective of state, why do we need, liberal democracy or democracy, basically liberal democracy or representative democracy? There are another perspective that is called developmental, right? Here you can see J.S. Mill, T.H. Green, and Harold Lasky is an advocate, right? And who talks about that state, right? That's fine. They accept that a state to protect, provide security and peace. A state is here to maintain law and order, but they said welfare is very much necessary. Welfare of the people is very necessary, right? Development is very necessary. Development of the entire domain of life is very necessary, like education, right? So promoting education and providing education is very necessary, and it is a task of the government to to provide education, to provide health, to provide securities, right? To provide quality of life, to provide employment, right? To eradicate poverty, to remove inequality, to reduce inequality, right? To reduce social injustice. So this all author talks about the developmental state, developmental democracy. So that is two perspective on there's a two variant of liberal democracy. One is protectionist and other is developmental. Now come to criticism of liberal democracy. ठीक है, criticism भी लिखना होगा, right? So भले ही आप इतना सारा फीचर्स ना लिख करके 4-5 फीचर्स लिखे और जेस मिल और एडमंड बर्ग का नाम जरूर लिखे, जॉन लॉक का नाम जरूर लिखे, और एक लाइन में आप प्रोटेक्शनिस्ट को लिख दे कि स्टेट इज सपोज्ड टू प्रोटेक्ट द राइट टू लाइफ, लिबर्टी एंड प्रॉपर्टी. जॉन लॉक एंड बैंथम इज द एडवोकेटिंग दिस पर्सपेक्टिव. नाउ डेवलपमेंटलिस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव में लिखें आप कि state, yes, state need to provide security and peace and maintain law and order, but it also has some task of development, right? Some task of welfare program. For example, to provide health, to provide education, to provide infrastructure, right? To provide employment, right? To provide pension and securities, right? So that is two perspectives. Now the criticism. So what is a criticism? So major criticism came from Rousseau, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, right? So आपको नाम लिखना है. So the major criticism is कि it is elected aristocracy. It is a rule of elected aristocracy कि आपने elect कर लिया उनको और फिर वो राजा बन गए, right? They have no concern for the masses, right? So that is one criticism, that it is a representative democracy or liberal democracy is a rule of elected aristocracy, right? Once representatives are elected, they are detached to the masses and need of the masses, right? Need of the constituency to which he or she belongs to. Okay, so the criticism is liberal democracy or representative democracy is a rule of elected aristocracy. No people participation. लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी में क्या होता है, एक बार पार्टिसिपेशन होता है इलेक्शन के दिन. आप देखेंगे इलेक्शन के दिन भीड़ है, हर पोलिंग बूथ पे, और उसके बाद पार्टिसिपेशन खत्म, आपने वोट दे दिया, डन. If you have voted, done, right? So Jean-Jacques Rousseau is very much critical of representative democracy. Why? Because he talks about participation. If there is no people participation in representative democracy, right? So he criticized the whole idea of representative democracy, right? The whole idea of democracy that could become a representative, and he said representative democracy as a rotten fiction. क्या बोला उन्होंने? जीन जैकस रूसो ने, रूसो को हम लोगों ने पढ़ा है, राइट? सो रूसो ने क्या बोला कि रिप्रेजेंटेटिव डेमोक्रेसी इज अ रोटन फिक्शन. ओके, नाउ कम टू द अनदर क्रिटिसिज्म. क्योंकि ये मेजर फॉर्म ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी है तो इसके बहुत सारे क्रिटिसिज्म है, राइट? क्योंकि अभी भी हर जगह आपको यही डेमोक्रेसी मिलेगा, रिप्रेजेंटेटिव डेमोक्रेसी, राइट? So democracy cannot be turned into representative because representation entails an illegitimate transfer of power from the principal demos to the agent, right? To the agent that is representative. Who is who is the principal? People. Who is demos? People, right? What is representation? अगर डेमोक्रेसी का अगर मतलब करें, अब डेमोस का क्या मतलब है? क्यों ये इलिजिटिमेट ट्रांसफर ऑफ पावर बोल रहे हैं? डेमोस अनक्रेसिया से बना है. डेमोस मतलब पीपल एंड रूल, राइट? सो रूल बाय पीपल, डेमोक्रेसी मीन्स रूल बाय पीपल. बट यहाँ रूल बाय पीपल तो है ही नहीं. इट इज रूल बाय द रिप्रेजेंटेटिव, rule by the few people, right? So whatever election you have invented method to transfer the and delegate the power to the representative, it's a very much few thinkers think that this is not a legitimate transfer of power. How can I transfer my own power to my representative, right? So democracy cannot be turned into representative democracy. Democracy should be democracy, that means rule of the people, rule by the people, right? What Abraham Lincoln said about democracy, democracy is a form of government, right, in which it is a rule of the people, rule by the people, and rule for the people. So where is by the people? It is not by the people, it is a representative who governing the state, the entire government, and the role of the people is a mere might in democracy, right? So once you have voted out for the 5 years, कोई पूछने नहीं आता आपको, right? So that's it. That is a major critique of representative democracy. One thing I have actually so many characteristics of democracy, representative democracy, so much of critique of democracy. One thing I actually forgot to miss, actually I missed to tell you that the features of democracy that is very much important. So एक तो मैंने आपको यहाँ पे बताया कि limited government is very much important, that I missed here to enlist the basic characteristics of the representative democracy. Second, which I missed, I should have mentioned in this list, this is universal adult franchise. That means all adults should have the voting rights, and that is also very much important characteristics of representative democracy, right? So ऐसा नहीं कि कुछ ही लोग वोट करके किसी को जिता दिए, no. Every adult, right, every citizen should have a right to vote, right? Whether they participate or not, that's a different point of view, different matter. but every representative must have, adult right to vote, whether a woman, whether a man, whether poor or rich, right? So representative democracy जो है, इसको हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं? हिंदी में प्रतिनिधि रिप्रेजेंटेशन को बोलते हैं. I don't know, but representative democracy calls in Hindi, but representative democracy, right? That's fine. Okay, so representative democracy क्या होता है कि जब हम उस representative democracy में हम खुद रूल नहीं करते, हम लीडर को इलेक्ट करते हैं ताकि वो रूल कर सके, राइट? और उसके कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स हैं जहां की जैसे कि गवर्नमेंट लिमिटेड होगा, एब्सोल्यूट नहीं होगा, ठीक है, लोगों का कंसेंट बहुत जरूरी होगा, पीरियोडिक इलेक्शन होगा कंसेंट के लिए. तो जो इलेक्शन होता है वो क्या होता है? कंसेंट आप देते हैं, फिर गवर्नमेंट बनती है. So we have finished representative democracy, right? Now I'm moving to the Marxist perspective of democracy. तो ये बड़ा आइडिया था रिप्रेजेंटेटिव डेमोक्रेसी का, राइट? अब आइडिया है वो बिल्कुल छोटा है, that we will see the socialist or Marxist democracy. The Marxist is very much critical to the liberal democracy, जो हम ऊपर बात कर चुके हैं, right? The Marxist was and is very much critical to the liberal democracy, right? For Marxist, communism is a perfect democracy. What is perfect democracy? Communism, right? Why communism is perfect democracy? Because here you can find social equality, right? So you can find social equality, and in communism only, individual can enjoy freedom to work. Otherwise, लोगों तो लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी में लोग क्या करते हैं? कंपेल होते हैं, लोगों का एक्सप्लॉइटेशन होता है, राइट? तो इसीलिए कम्युनिज्म इज अ परफेक्ट फॉर्म ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी. वहां पर क्या क्या है? एक तो सोशल इक्वालिटी है, और दूसरा क्या है? फ्रीडम टू वर्क, राइट? नो एक्सप्लॉइटेशन. No exploitation. Why no exploitation? You all know Marxism. I know I'm not going to teach you Marxism because there is no private property. And when there is no private property, there is no class. And there is no class, there is no state, right? And there is no state, that means no exploitation, because state is a instrument of exploitation. What Marxist thinks of and about the state. Okay, so they thought about social equality and they thought about freedom to work, right? So no exploitation, right? So in communism, there shall be, voluntary organization, there will be, social organization, there will be community organization that will organize the political life. And that would be the true form of democracy. Okay. What would be the Marxist democracy? Marxist democracy will be, a stateless society in which voluntary group, cooperative group, community, society, they will organize the political life, and it would be not centralized. Basically, it would be decentralized. That is also one of the features of the socialist democracy, right? It will not be centralized. Fine. So that is the Marxist theory of democracy. सो ये जितने भी हमने अभी तक डेमोक्रेसी पढ़ा है, इसको क्लासिकल डेमोक्रेसी के नाम से जानते हैं, राइट। चाहे वो एथेनियन डेमोक्रेसी को हम, एथेनियन डेमोक्रेसी के बारे में हमने बात किया, हमने बात किया रिप्रेजेंटेटिव डेमोक्रेसी के बारे में, हमने बात किया मार्क्सिस्ट पर्सपेक्टिव के बारे में। ये सब जो डेमोक्रेसी है, इन सबको हम क्लासिकल डेमोक्रेसी बोलते हैं, ठीक है। ये 20th सेंचुरी का डेमोक्रेसी नहीं है, ये 18th सेंचुरी में आया, कुछ तो 16 17 सेंचुरी में लिबरल डेमोक्रेसी आया। एथेनियन डेमोक्रेसी तो 2300 साल पहले निकल के आया एथेंस में, राइट। कंटेम्प्रेरी डेमोक्रेसी 20th सेंचुरी में इवॉल्व हुआ, बेसिकली 1950 के बाद, राइट। सो आप देखेंगे कि सोशलिस्ट डेमोक्रेसी अप्लाई करने की कोशिश कहां की गई, यूएसएसआर में, तो वहां पे मार्क्सिस्ट डेमोक्रेसी होगी, राइट। सो कंटेम्प्रेरी डेमोक्रेसी 1950 के बाद आप देखेंगे थियरी आना शुरू हुआ, राइट। और दो कंटेम्प्रेरी थियरीज है बेसिकली, एक तो है एलिटिस्ट थियरी ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी और दूसरा है प्लूरलिस्ट थियरी ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी, जो अभी हम लोग बात करेंगे। सो कंटेम्प्रेरी थियरी, जो कंटेम्प्रेरी थियरी ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी है वो दो तरीके का है। Right, so we have two variation of contemporary theory that developed in in the second half of 20th century. One is elitist theory of democracy, and another is pluralist theory, pluralist। तो ये प्लूरल से आया है, प्लूरल मतलब डाइवर्स, राइट। सो जैसे इंडिया इज अ प्लूरल सोसाइटी, इसका क्या मतलब है? इसका मतलब है कि इंडिया में अलग अलग इतने ग्रुप के लोग रहते हैं, अलग अलग जाति के लोग रहते हैं, अलग अलग धर्म मजहब के लोग रहते हैं, अलग अलग कम्युनिटी रहती है, अलग अलग ट्राइबल्स हैं। ट्राइबल्स भी एक तरीके का नहीं है ना, धर्म भी एक तरीके का नहीं है, विद इन एक धर्म में कितने सारे वेरिएशन है। दैट मीन्स इंडिया इज अ प्लूरल सोसाइटी, इंडिया इज अ डाइवर्स सोसाइटी, इंडिया इज अ मल्टीकल्चरल सोसाइटी, राइट। सो प्लूरल का मतलब है डाइवर्स, बोल अलग अलग। ये बस लिटरल मीनिंग आप जरूर रखना, क्योंकि लैंग्वेज कंस्ट्रक्ट मीनिंग, यू मस्ट कैच द मीनिंग ऑफ द वर्ड, then you will be able to better, you will be able better to explain and write also. So pluralist theory of democracy and elitist theory of democracy. Elitist मतलब ये वर्ड आया है elite से। What do you mean by elite? Of course, rich, prosperous, elite मतलब rich और prosperous, right, dominant, क्योंकि सारा जो धन है उन्हीं के पास है, सारा माल उन्हीं के पास है, राइट। सो दे पोजेस इकोनॉमी, राइट, दे पोजेस सोशल रिस्पेक्ट because they are dominant, right, and then they become dominant, right. So economy also does matter. So elite means rich, prosperous, dominant। अगर वर्ड, अगर आप ये दोनों समझ गए तो आइए हम लोग बात करते हैं कंटेम्प्रेरी थियरी ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी के बारे में। So ये this contemporary theory was outcome of the empirical research. Remember, empiricism, right? The scientific method, observation, right? So that empiricism developed in 17th, 18th century, and that continued, right? And the actual research has started in 1950, and that was known as the behavior revolution, right? Behavioral science. हम पढ़ेंगे जब theory हम approaches पढ़ेंगे, behavioralism पढ़ेंगे, but you understand that empirical method means observation. So contemporary theory is not based on certain opinions, certain idea that elected leader meritorious होगा या elected leader सही नहीं होगा या सही होगा, whatever. They actually observed and studied the actual practice of democracy, and they talked about that the two, that is elite theory of democracy and second is pluralist theory of democracy, right? So this theory are outcome of empirical research done by scholars, right? The behavioral movement influenced study on democracy, and a scholar tried to explain what is democracy in actual sense. Okay, so this contemporary theory are the outcome of empirical research, right? Empirical study done by the scholars of democracy like Robert Dahl, right? Like Joseph Schumpeter. ये दो लोग ऐसे हैं, आप जरूर नाम रखिएगा, जोसेफ शुम्पीटर एंड रॉबर्ट डाल. ये दोनों लोगों ने एम्पिरिकल रिसर्च डेमोक्रेसी के ऊपर किया और खूब लिखा डेमोक्रेसी को लेकर के, राइट? रॉबर्ट डाल ने तो बहुत लिखा, कल भी आपको एक किताब का नाम बताया था, right, on democracy in 1998, but he wrote a lot. So we will introduce you when time and context will come, not now. So the contemporary theory of democracy, came in 1950 and thereafter, and the behavioral movement influenced the study of democracy a lot. And so the first is elitist theory of democracy. What is that? So elitist theory of democracy believes that elite rules. Elite rules, simple. एक अगर एक लाइन में अगर आपको बोला जाए कि क्या मानते हैं लोग, इनका कहना है कि elite rules and citizen at large ruled. Citizens at large are ruled. हर जगह पे ये दो सिंपल मायने हैं कि जो elite हैं वो रूल करता है और रूल करने के लिए होता है. जो सिटीजन्स हैं, जो मासेस है, अगर हम इसको मासेस बोले, क्योंकि कुछ ही लोग होते हैं और बाद बाकी तो मासेस मॉब्स कहलाते हैं. जो मासेस है, सिटीजन एट लार्ज है, वो रूल्ड होता है. ये बेसिक एजम्पशन है. जब आप समझ लिए तो आइए आगे बढ़ते हैं. Now, see, the elitist theorist, elitist theory of democracy believe that the entire political system is divided in two parts: rulers and ruled. Right? So, political system is divided into ruler and ruled. कुछ लोग रूल करने के लिए पैदा होते हैं और बाद के जो बचे हैं लोग, वो रूल्ड होने के लिए पैदा होते हैं, रूल करने के लिए पैदा नहीं होते. इनका मानना है कि पूरा जो इंटायर सिस्टम है, जो क्लास है, दो तरह का है, रूलर है, रूल्ड है. ये बिल्कुल मार्क्स से बिल्कुल अलग है, राइट। एक रूलर क्लास है, एक रूल्ड क्लास है, राइट। एंड जो रूलर है वो इलीट है हमेशा, राइट। सो रूलर्स आर इलीट और पॉलिटिकल इंटरप्रेनर्स, क्योंकि ये पॉलिटिकल इंटरप्रेनर्स क्योंकि ये पॉलिटिक्स में भाग लेते हैं, राइट। एंड हु पोजेस मैनिपुलेटिव स्किल्स, और मैनिपुलेट करते हैं चीजों को लेकर के, मोबिलाइज करते हैं लोगों को और बोलते हैं इन लोगों को कि अच्छा मैं ये कर दूंगा, मैं वो कर दूंगा। इनके पास ऑरेटरी स्किल्स होती हैं, हाँ, इनके पास मैनिपुलेटिव स्किल्स होते हैं, इनके पास पॉलिटिकल स्किल्स होता है। ये सारे स्किल्स अप्लाई करते हैं, ठीक है, इलेक्ट होने के लिए। चाहे आप कोई भी किसी भी पार्टी को वोट दे, लेकिन वो जो आप जिसको वोट देंगे वो एलीट है, वो धनी मनी आदमी है। वो इस पार्टी से जाएगा, हटेगा तो उस पार्टी में जाएगा, उस पार्टी से हटेगा तो उस पार्टी में जाएगा। बट हमेशा आप देखेंगे कि कंटेस्ट वही करेगा, या उसका बेटा करेगा, या उसका भाई करेगी, या उसकी बीबी करेगा। यानी कि मासिस से वो नहीं निकल के नहीं आ पाता है। इनका कहना है कि क्यों नहीं निकल के आ पाता है, क्योंकि जो एलीट है उनके पास बेसिक स्किल्स होते हैं। वो बेसिक स्किल्स क्या होता है, वो मैनिपुलेट करना जानते हैं, उनके पास इकोनॉमिक पावर भी होता है। समटाइम्स वो ब्यूरोक्रेसी के लोग भी होते हैं, समटाइम्स वो आर्मी के लोग भी होते हैं, समटाइम्स वो आपको लैंडेड क्लास भी होता है। तो क्लास कोई हो, लेकिन वो लीडर जो है, जो वो एलीट है बेसिकली, राइट। वो रूल करने के लिए पैदा हुआ है और वो रूल करता है किसी भी कंट्री में। जो जो लीडर्स है, दे आर द पॉलिटिकल एलीट, राइट। एंड द सिटीजन एट लार्ज, you know, or the masses, citizen at large or the masses, इसको masses भी कहते हैं, have less interest perhaps and little knowledge of public affair and largely live in passion. जो citizen at large है, जो masses है, उसको इतना political skills भी नहीं है, वो इतना manipulative भी नहीं है, और उसके पास इतना aspirations भी नहीं है कि मैं लीडर बन जाऊं और मैं देश को चलाऊं, राइट। उनके पास प्रॉपर्टी है, एलीट के पास तो प्रॉपर्टी होती है, तो वो एंगेज हो लेते हैं। बट जो रूल्ड लोग हैं, जो मैसेस है, राइट, मोर और लेस दे आर द मिडिल क्लास और लोअर मिडिल क्लास, राइट, राइट। सो दे बिलीव दैट द political system are divided into two class, one is ruled and other is ruler, right. So ruler have basic skills, right. They have manipulative skills, they are political entrepreneurs, right. They have, and they are basically elite, right, right. And they govern, right, they govern. But there are the other part of the society which are ruled, the masses, the citizens at large, right. They they are passive towards the political system. कि हो रहा है गवर्नमेंट कुछ भी करे, मुझे कोई मतलब नहीं है। खाना मतलब जॉब करने से, खाना खाने से और आराम से, यार कौन टेंशन लेगा, टेंशन भी नहीं लेते, राइट। कौन टेंशन लेगा पॉलिटिक्स में, राइट। सो द लार्ज masses at large, citizens at large have little knowledge about the politics, right. They have little interest about the politics, they have no manipulative skills, and they can become political entrepreneurs, right. So in democracy the elite participate, right, and the masses also participate. But elite, for to be elect, elected, for to be elected, and masses to elect. masses कैसे participate करता है, elect करने के लिए, और elite कैसे participate करता है, elect करवाने के लिए, right. So the political elite, right, participate in democracy to be elected, okay, and the masses or citizen at large participate in democracy to elect their leaders, okay. So that is the one component of democracy, and this is called elitist theory of democracy. right? And democracy is largely peaceful competition among the members of the elite, right, for the formal position of leadership within the system. So डेमोक्रेसी क्या है? एक ऐसा कॉम्पिटिटिव सिस्टम है जहां पर जो एलीट है वो आपस में संघर्ष करते हैं, आपस में इलेक्शन लड़ते हैं और वो खुद जीतते हैं। अगर इस बार जीत गया तो दूसरी बार हार जाएगा, या इस बार अगर हार गया तो वो दूसरी बार लड़ते हैं, तीसरी बार लड़ते हैं और जीत जाते हैं, फिर से वो पार्लियामेंट में जाते हैं, वो रूल करते हैं, राइट? सो दैट इज द बेसिक आइडिया ऑफ एलिटिस्ट थ्योरी ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी. And this elitist theory of democracy is based on the idea of Pareto, right? The circulation of elite, right? What Pareto says, हल्का बता देता हूँ, but जब मैं पावर पढ़ाऊंगा तो I will tell you in detail what does it mean. इलेक्शन होता है, अभी बताता हूँ. इलेक्शन होता है, राइट? इलेक्शन में क्या होता है? एक पार्टी हारती है और दूसरी पार्टी जीतती है, बट दोनों पार्टी में इलीट लोग डोमिनेट करते हैं, राइट? सो ऐसा नहीं कि इलेक्शन होता है तो इलीट हट के मासे जो सिटीजन एट लार्ज है, जो मासेस है, वो पार्लियामेंट में चले जाते हैं. नहीं, इनका मानना है कि एक इलीट हट जाता है तो दूसरा इलीट उसमें घुस जाता है, right? So that is circulation of elite. Did you get it? Okay, let me, this is a parliament. और मैं बताता हूं कि एक मान लीजिए यूपीए में भी इलीट कांग्रेस पार्टी, जितने भी जो भी पार्टी है उसमें होल्ड कौन करता है? जो लोग बहुत ही सुखी, मतलब जो भी बहुत प्रोस्पेरस लोग होते हैं और सोशल रूप से डोमिनेंट भी होते हैं, पर्टिकुलरली इलीट. और दूसरा था बीजेपी. तो बीजेपी तो खुद एनडीए, तो बीजेपी में सारे लोग मिलाकर के एनडीए गठबंधन बनाए हैं और कांग्रेस के लीडरशिप में सारे यूपीए में गठबंधन बनाए हैं. तो यहां देखेंगे ये यूपीए क्या है? ये बहुत सारी पार्टियों का गठबंधन है. और एक पार्टी क्या है? पार्टी में जो इलीट लोग हैं वो पावर होल्ड करते हैं. केवल जो मासेस है, जो झंडा उठाता है वो तो झंडा ही उठाता रहेगा, उसके बच्चे भी झंडे उठाते रहेंगे, वो जय जय करता रहेगा. इन डेमोक्रेसी का मानना है, एलिटिस्ट थ्योरी का, कि चलो अगर यूपीए गया तो ये बाहर जाएगा, अगर ये अंदर आएगा तो ये बाहर जाएगा, मतलब पावर में. तो एक बार ये आएगा, एक बार ये आएगा, ऐसे सर्कुलेशन होता रहेगा, राइट? एक बार ये, एक बार ये. इसका मतलब ये नहीं कि मासेस जो है वो रूल करेगी, नो. ये सर्कुलेशन ऑफ इलीट पे पूरा डेमोक्रेसी जो है वो बेस्ड है. राइट? सो पेरेटो का सर्कुलेशन ऑफ इलीट अगर आप समझ गए कि ये जो इलीट थ्योरी ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी है इज बेस्ड ऑन पेरेटोस सर्कुलेशन ऑफ इलीट, रॉबर्ट माइकल्स आयरन लॉ ऑफ ओलिगार्की. रॉबर्ट माइकल्स ने एक किताब लिखी थी, पॉलिटिकल पार्टी, राइट? उसमें कहा था कि कोई भी पार्टी हो, कोई भी पॉलिटिकल पार्टी हो, चाहे वो लेफ्ट पार्टी हो, चाहे वो राइट पार्टी हो, चाहे वो सेंटर पार्टी हो, किसी तरह का भी पार्टी हो, वहां पर आप देखेंगे कि जो एलीट लोग हैं वो पावर एंड पोजीशन होल्ड करते हैं, और जो बाद बाकी के लोग हैं वो मासेस है, उनके फॉलोअर हैं, वो कभी भी उसमें नहीं जा पाते, राइट? और बहुत मुश्किल से होता है, उनको बहुत ही कंटेस्ट करना पड़ता है. एंड एक आता दैट एक्सेप्शंस शुड नॉट बी काउंटेड हियर. द जनरल रूल इज द ऑल पार्टी इज, you know, in all party position and power is being held by the elite, right? And that he says iron law of oligarchy. यानी कि ओलिगार्की का मतलब क्या है कि कुछ ही लोग, कुछ ही पावरफुल लोग किसी भी पार्टी के अंदर अपना पोजीशन होल्ड करके रखते हैं, और जो रेस्ट होता है वो तो फॉलोअर होता है, right? So that is Robert Michael's Michel's iron law of oligarchy, right? And C. Wright Mills theory of power elite. तो तीन थ्योरी पे मैंने अभी बताया है कि तीन थ्योरी पे बेस्ड है, आपको भी लिखना है. सर्कुलेशन ऑफ एलीट, रॉबर्ट माइकल्स आयरन लॉ ऑफ ओलिगार्की एंड सी राइट मिल्स थ्योरी ऑफ पावर एलीट. यहाँ पे एलीट का, right? So that is a typing error. So C. Wright Mills theory of power elite. What does it mean? C. Wright Mills says, three community hold power. वो तीन कम्युनिटी कौन है? एक तो उन्होंने बोला है मिलिट्री, दूसरा है ब्यूरोक्रेसी एंड तीसरा है पॉलिटिकल लीडर. राइट? ये तीनों ग्रुप पावर होल्ड करते हैं अमेरिकन सोसाइटी में, राइट? सो बेसिकली इनका ये थ्योरी है, थ्योरी ऑफ पावर elite. Okay, so that is the three theory that on which elite theory of democracy is based. If you got the three, this little bit, the next a topic that we are going to discuss is power, in which we are going to discuss all this power theory, the elite theory of power. So see, elite theory of democracy is based on Pareto circulation of elite, Robert Michael's iron law of oligarchy, and C. Wright Mills theory of power elite. Okay, and what is the theme? What is the basic assumption? Assumption is democracy means rule of citizen at large is a myth. डेमोक्रेसी के रूल बाय पीपल जो कहते हैं लोग, ये मिथ है, राइट? क्यों मिथ है? बिकॉज पावर लाइज इन द हैंड ऑफ पावर elite, right? So power lies in the hand of elite, right? What is role of the citizen at large, right? What is the role of the masses? To choose the elite, राइट? जैसे मैंने आपको पहले बताया कि चाहे वो कांग्रेस हो या बीजेपी हो, लोगों को क्या करना है? वोट करना है. और दोनों पार्टी में जो पावरफुल लोग हैं वही पोजीशन होल्ड करते हैं, राइट? सो अब डेमोक्रेसी का क्या मतलब है? डेमोक्रेसी का मतलब है कि फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शन हो जाए, फ्री कॉम्पिटिटिव पार्टी सिस्टम हो जाए और जस्ट एंड फेयर इलेक्टोरल लॉज रहे. इलेक्शन का जो लॉ है वो फ्री एंड फेयर रहे, जस्ट रहे, रीजनेबल रहे, राइट? एंड दैट इज इनफ टू कंसीडर अ डेमोक्रेसी, राइट? सो किसी भी डेमोक्रेसी में अगर फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शन होता है, वहां पर कॉम्पिटिटिव पार्टी सिस्टम होती है एंड वहां पे जो इलेक्टोरल लॉ है वो जस्ट एंड फेयर है, इसका मतलब है कि वहां पर डेमोक्रेसी है. डेमोक्रेसी का मतलब ये नहीं है कि रूल बाय द पीपल, it is rule of the elite basically, right? So they said that in the contemporary democracy leaders are elite, right? And election is a competition among elite in the society and masses only choose them, right? So elitist theory take democracy is a purely procedural term, and procedural democracy, right? What procedural democracy talks about? Yesterday we discussed it. Procedural democracy talks about there should be a process of democracy. And what is the process? The leader should be elected. Free and fair competition, right? Free and fair election and competitive party system, right? And the electoral law should be there. That electoral law should be just and fair. जैसे हमारे यहाँ क्या है? FPTP, first past the post system. FPTP, फर्स्ट पास्ट द पोस्ट सिस्टम. इसमें क्या होता है कि किसी भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी में जिस कैंडिडेट को सबसे ज्यादा वोट मिलता है, अगर मान लीजिए कि 4 कैंडिडेट खड़े हैं आपके कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी में, राइट? कैंडिडेट ए, कैंडिडेट बी, कैंडिडेट सी और कैंडिडेट डी. राइट, और उस कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी में वोट कितना है, मान लीजिए हम 100, राइट, अगर 100 वोट है तो इसको मिल गया 28, इसको मिल गया 22, इसको मिल गया 26, तो कितना रह गया, जो ओके लेट मी ऐड 28, 22, 26, 6, 76, right? Now he got 24, right? So now who is a winner? Winner is A, right? So that is the first past the post system, right? तो ये इलेक्टोरल लॉ है। तो एलिटिस्ट थ्योरी कहते हैं कि अगर फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शन हो और वहां पर कॉम्पिटिटिव पार्टी सिस्टम हो और इलेक्टोरल लॉ फेयर हो तो उसको हम डेमोक्रेसी कंसीडर करेंगे। और वो कहते हैं कि जो कंटेम्परेरी डेमोक्रेसी है, इन कंटेम्परेरी डेमोक्रेसी लीडर्स आर elite, right, and election is a mere competition among the elite in the society, and masses only participate to vote them, to choose them, right? And so elitist theorist takes democracy, elitist theorist take democracy in a procedural, purely procedural term. So exponent कौन है? Exponent जो सबसे बड़े हैं वो जोसेफ शुम्पीटर है, right? Then Max Weber talks about that. Raymond Aron, Robert Michels also talks about that kind of democracy, right? That kind of features in a democracy. So Joseph Schumpeter is very much important here to talk about. What Joseph Schumpeter talks about elitist theory of democracy, right? He criticized classical democracy like representative democracy, participatory democracy, right? And then he proposed something and he says, democracy means rule of people is a myth, right? Democracy is a system in which the leaders compete each other, right? And they form the government, right? The winner form the government. So in democracy, the democratic method is a means of a competitive struggle for the people's vote. ये जो leaders हैं वो अपने आप में competition करते हैं, क्या करने के लिए? लोगों के वोट पाने के लिए, right? So leaders compete with each other to gain the vote of the masses, right? So the political leaders and an effort to gain support at the polls will shape public policy to fit the citizens' desire. So sometimes, the political elite make the policy. ये जो political elite हैं, leaders हैं, वो policy भी बना देते हैं। क्यों बनाते हैं? क्योंकि उनको आपका वोट चाहिए, right? वो आपको पार्टिसिपेट, जो मासेस है उसको पार्टिसिपेट नहीं करने देंगे, वो क्या करेंगे? खुद पार्टिसिपेट करेंगे और जो पावर है वो अपने हाथों में रखेंगे, राइट? और आपको रिझाने के लिए हो सकता है सड़क बनवा दे, आपको रिझाने के लिए हो सकता है कि कोई ऐसी पॉलिसी दे दे, यू मे गेट बेनिफिट, बट in real term the people are not governing themselves. Who are governing? It is power elite. It is a elite, it is a ruling class which is governing basically, right? So that is the Joseph Schumpeter. For Joseph Schumpeter, what is election? Election is a method of method in which leaders compete each other for the people's vote. right? So it is a competitive method, and they consider democracy as a market. Democracy as a market, right? जहां पर वोटर्स है और बहुत सारे वोटर्स हैं और लीडर्स हैं. लीडर्स क्या करता है? वोटर्स को रिझाता है, राइट, अट्रैक्ट करता है, राइट. वो अलग अलग के प्रोमिसेस करता है, हो सकता तो कुछ काम भी करवा देता है, नहीं तो लास्ट में पैसा भी बांट देता है ना, राइट. सो दे आर द पॉलिटिकल इंटरप्रीनर्स, दे इन्वेस्ट ऑन वोटर्स. जो लीडर्स है वो इन्वेस्ट करता है किसके ऊपर? वोटर्स के ऊपर, राइट. इसीलिए उनको पॉलिटिकल इंटरप्रीनर्स बोलते हैं, उनको राजनीतिक व्यवसायी बोलते हैं, है ना, क्यों? राजनीतिक रूप से वो व्यवसाय करते हैं, right? And that's why called the market model. So elitist theory of democracy is also called the market model of democracy. It means democracy is a like market, right, in which voters are buyers and leaders are entrepreneurs, right? And there's one book called Economic Theory of Democracy written by Anthony Downs. He explained how political actions and the leaderships based on economic principles, right? So the elitist theory of democracy primarily concentrate study on leaders, political parties, elite, and they take approach of procedural. Their approach is very much procedural approach of democracy, right? So that is the elite theory or elitist theory of democracy. Right, now we are going to talk about the pluralist theory of democracy. तो यहाँ पे आप देखेंगे कि जो elitist theory of democracy है वहां पे फोकस किसको किया गया है? इंडिविजुअल को, लीडर्स को, ठीक है. और वो elite हैं तो वो इलेक्शन कंटेस्ट करते हैं, वो वोटर को रिझाते हैं, वोटर को अट्रैक्ट करते हैं और इलेक्शन के टाइम पे वोट लेते हैं और फिर गवर्न करते हैं. किसी भी पार्टी को उठा के देख लीजिए आप, राइट, कोई भी, चाहे वो लेफ्ट का हो, चाहे राइट का हो, कोई सेंटर का हो, चाहे वो कोई कास्ट बेस्ड पार्टी हो, इट मे बी आरजेडी, इट मे बी एसपी और बीएसपी. यू कैन सी दैट द only political elite, right, and the elite who captures power, right, and the masses at large, the citizens at large only choose their leader, which is elite basically, right? So Joseph Schumpeter talks about what is election and what is democracy. Democracy is a method in which leaders compete each other, right, and people, citizen at large, choose their leader, right? So election is a competition among the leaders, right, to attract the people so that they can get vote, right? So political leaders are basically entrepreneurs, right? They invest on the masses in terms of policy. हो सकता है कोई रोड बनवा दिया, मान लीजिए इलेक्शन आने वाला है तो आप देखेंगे कि पानी भी सही आ रहा है, बिजली भी थोड़ा ठीक ठाक आ रहा है, और लीडर्स घोषणाएं भी कर देते हैं कि अच्छा ये कराएंगे, वो बनवाएंगे, ऐसे होगा, right? So lots of promises you see. What does it mean? It means that they are influencing you, inducing people, right? They are giving, जब हम फिश मारते हैं तो हम लोग उसको कांटे में लगा के डालते, राइट, और फिर वो खाता है और फिर हम उसको ऊपर कर लेते हैं. This is the same thing, right? The leaders attract people through different mechanisms. So election and democracy is a means to compete, right? So it is a competition among the leaders to attract the vote, right? And that is Joseph Schumpeter. Democracy doesn't mean the rule by the people. It means a competition among the political leaders, or you can call them political entrepreneurs, to attract people and gain vote of the people. Okay, so this only elite rule, right? And the rest of the people ruled always. So that is the elitist theory of democracy, right? And they focused on the individual political party. Now the pluralist theory of democracy, you see, and again now Robert Dahl, right? Robert Dahl wrote a book called Polyarchy, and one book that is a democracy in search of. In 1990, he wrote Democracy in Search of something, Truth or something. You can just Google it, like Robert Dahl's book. He wrote in 1989, and the title of the book I am missing. So I'm giving you name, Robert Dahl's book in 1989. He wrote Democracy, a preface something karke. What Robert Dahl focused on, he didn't focus on the individual, but he focused on the pressure groups. He focused on associational life. एसोसिएशनल लाइफ मतलब क्या है? कोई भी ग्रुप, जैसे आपका स्टूडेंट यूनियन का ग्रुप है, या आपका किसान का ग्रुप है, या लेबर ट्रेड यूनियन है, या टीचर्स का एसोसिएशन है, या इंजीनियर्स का एसोसिएशन है, या आईएएस का एसोसिएशन है, या आईपीएस का एसोसिएशन है, या कॉर्पोरेट का एसोसिएशन है. इन ग्रुप प्रेशर ग्रुप्स के इनने फोकस किया और कहा कि डेमोक्रेसी ये नहीं है कि इंडिविजुअल लीडर्स इलेक्शन लड़ते हैं और जो चाहे करते हैं. नो, देयर आर प्रेशर ग्रुप्स एंड द पावर, इट्स नॉट पावर लाई इन द फ्यू पीपल, इन द हैंड ऑफ फ्यू पीपल. नो, पावर लाई इन द disperse in the society, and they disperse in the society in group, like pressure groups, like associational groups, like trade unions, like teachers unions, like corporate unions, like farmers unions, right? So it's not elitist theory. कहते हैं कि पावर कहाँ लाई करता है? elite में, right? और elite कौन से? कुछ ही लोग तो elite होते हैं. मान लीजिए अभी पार्लियामेंट में कितने कितने एमपीज हैं, तो अगर आप देख लेंगे तो 545 लोकसभा का है. मैं लोकसभा को एलएस बस लिखता हूं, और 243 राज्यसभा का है. यही तो है. क्या ये लोग पावर होल्ड कर दे इतना ज्यादा जो जोसेफ शुम्पीटर कह रहे हैं और जो एलिटिस्ट थ्योरी कह रहे हैं कि पावर लाई इन द हैंड ऑफ द एलीट, एंड डेमोक्रेसी इज ओनली कॉम्पिटिटिव सिस्टम अमंग द. ये तो राज्यसभा में ये तो स्टेट से चुन के आते हैं. बात कीजिए 545 की. 545 भी आप देखेंगे कि उसमें पूरा चुन के नहीं आते, राइट? सो अप्रोक्सीमेटली 530 जो है वो 530, यस, ये बड़े बड़े राज्यों से इतने चुन के आते हैं. 530. अब यह क्या ये 530 जो लोग हैं सारे पावर होल्ड करते हैं? रॉबर्ट डेल कहता है नहीं, ऐसा नहीं है. आप लोगों ने जो जजमेंट किया है, जो पावर लाई करता है इन हैंड ऑफ द इंडिविजुअल, दिस पॉलिटिकल लीडर्स, दे आर elite, but see, power lie not in the hand of few, but in the hand of power is dispersed. पावर क्या हुआ है? फैला हुआ है. कहां पर? एसोसिएशनल ग्रुप्स में, जैसे प्रेशर ग्रुप्स में, जैसे ट्रेड यूनियन, टीचर्स यूनियन, कॉर्पोरेट यूनियन, फार्मर्स यूनियन, वुमेन्स यूनियन. आप देखेंगे सिविल सोसाइटी ग्रुप, जितने भी एसोसिएशन है, राइट? सो पावर सेंट्रलाइज्ड नहीं है. पावर क्या है, डिस्पर्स्ड है, राइट। इसको उन्होंने क्या टर्म दिया, पॉलियार्की, राइट। इतना अगर आप समझ गए तो चलिए हम थोड़ा आराम से देखते हैं। So while the elitist theory of democracy analyze the role of political party, political leader, right? Political party, political leaders, right? The pluralist democracy are also procedural, but they focused on the pluralist theory has focused on the role of pressure group in democracy, the role of associational group, right? So both democracy is a procedural, right? They all believe procedural, but they believe that एक बिलीव क्या करता है कि पावर कहां होल्ड करता है, इलीट। दोनों प्रोसीजरल डेमोक्रेसी में बिलीव करते हैं कि इलेक्शन अगर करा दीजिए तो ठीक है। एक इलीट में बिलीव करता है कि पावर कहां लाई करता है, इलीट में। दूसरा बिलीव करता है कि पावर कहां लाई करता है, एसोसिएशनल ग्रुप में, जिसको प्रेशर ग्रुप भी बोलते हैं, राइट। सो फॉर जोसेफ शुम्पीटर, power lies in the association, right? Power lies in the union, power lies in the pressure groups, right? So Robert Dahl's theory of polyarchy, it says individual does not play important role, it is associational life, right? It is a pressure groups that influences democracy, right? And he said that the political and socio-economic institution and practices necessary and sufficient to maximize attainment of goal in democracy, right? ये कहते हैं कि जो भी सोशल, इकोनॉमिक एंड पॉलिटिकल एसोसिएशनल ग्रुप है, जो प्रेशर ग्रुप्स हैं, एसोसिएशनल लाइफ है, वो सफिशिएंट है अपने गोल्स को अटेन करने में, अपने इंटरेस्ट को मैक्सिमाइज करने में, राइट? व्हाट ही कॉल्स पॉलियार्कीज, right? So that is the pluralist theory of democracy. So simple. इतना पढ़ने के बाद आइए हम थोड़ा सा कुछ आपको, I'll give you few questions to solve. Discuss major ideas of representative democracy. Right? Critically analyze representative democracy. Right? It's very necessary to practice. You do practice on each question. A word you can write 250. Here also 250. Okay. Now the representative democracy हो गया. Okay. Now Second question, discuss Marxist theory of democracy. कभी आता नहीं, कभी आएगा भी नहीं, बट कर लीजिएगा आप लोग. Marxist theory of democracy. Second question is about evaluate elitist theory of democracy. और इसी को दूसरे फॉर्म में लिख सकते हैं, डिस्कस. क्वेश्चन दूसरा लिख रहा हूं बट आंसर सेम होगा. डिस्कस जोसेफ Schumpeter view on democracy. नाम देके घबराना नहीं है. एलिटिस्ट थियरी ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी को इलोबरेट करना है और जोसेफ शुम्पीटर को मेंशन करना है, राइट. और क्रिटिक करना है आपको. क्रिटिक करना है रॉबर्ट हल का, राइट. Then the next question is, what is polyarchy? Yeah, right. What is polyarchy? Or this question can be twisted as discuss Robert Dahl view on democracy, right. So अगर रॉबर्ट डल्स व्यू ऑन डेमोक्रेसी आए तो कल जो पढ़ाया था मैंने उसको भी डालना है. पॉलिसी ओरिएंटेड डेमोक्रेसी जो बात करते हैं वो प्रोसेस ओरिएंटेड डेमोक्रेसी, और उसके जो 5-6 पॉइंट बताए थे मैंने वो सब भी इसमें डालना है. बट केवल अगर बस डाल देना है, no cable, right. So that is the pluralist theory of democracy. Now we will study 2 more form of democracy. One is participatory democracy and second is deliberative democracy, right. So participatory democracy is a very much critical of representative democracy. Participatory democracy को भी liberal democracy भी बोलते हैं, right? सबको liberal, क्योंकि जहां पर liberty है वहां उसको liberal democracy बोलेंगे. So participatory democracy criticized, representative democracy basically, as Rousseau said that the representative democracy is a rotten fiction, right. It is a mere myth, right. So here I have given you the one picture that explains some participatory democracy where people are sitting together and they are discussing about the art of government, right, the business of government. So they are talking about business, budget, they are talking about any plan, developmental plan. They may have but they are talking about what is needed. There are local council, right? And there are local development plan, right? So these pictures reflect that the people must participate, should participate in their, you know, government, because you know everyone doesn't know what is the real problem, right? The wearer knows where shoe pinches. जो जूता खुद पहनता है उसको पता चलता है कि जूता ना कहाँ पे अटक रहा है या कहाँ पे अनकंफर्टेबल है, राइट? सबको नहीं पता चलता, right? So participatory democracy is a very much important and very much critical to the the representative democracy, and it is based on certain premises, right? So let's see what premises it talks about. It talks about participatory democracy refers that more participation will provide better discussion. Now you see the people are sitting and they are debating, they are discussing, they are doing discussion on different issue and primarily local issue they are facing. So participatory democracy refers that more participation will provide better discussion, right? And a fuller realization of citizens' right and human potential. So अगर participation होगा तो क्या होगा कि वहां पे better discussion होगा, वहां पे जो issue है वो resolve होगा, right? And if you see the participatory democracy, then the first example is Athenian democracy, where debate and deliberation was very much important, where participation was very much important, where accountability of the leaders were very important, right? So Athenian democracy is the classical example of participatory participation, right? कि लोगों को पार्टिसिपेट भी करना चाहिए और लोगों को डेलिब्रेट भी करना चाहिए, कहां पर? स्टेट में, बिकॉज स्टेट इज द हाईएस्ट and resolve the issue, right? And to achieve a public good life, right? And Rousseau was also critical of liberal democracy, that is right? What is general will? You all know what is Rousseau's general will, right? In general will, everyone participate and discuss, and then they make the law. Carol Packman. Now we will talk Carol Packman. Though Joel de Wolf, we talk Benjamin Barber. So we will focus on Carol Packman and Joel de Wolf and Benjamin Barber. तो हम अपना फोकस जब लिखेंगे तो कैरोल पैकमैन के ऊपर रखेंगे ज्यादा, ओके? तो नाम सबका लिखेंगे कि दे आर द मेजर एक्सपोनेंट ऑफ पार्टिसिपेटरी डेमोक्रेसी, राइट? So theory of participatory democracy proposes that the participation produces popular control, right? Control on the issue, agenda. They also control the decision-making process. They also control its implementation and perhaps better implementation, right? So Joel de Wolf talks about participatory democracy provides egalitarian social relations. Participatory democracy क्या provide करता है? Egalitarian social relations. Participatory democracy motivate to engage with public affair, right? Participatory democracy, right? And this participation is the basis for the popular control in modern union and party organization. जब तक participation नहीं होगा तब तक हम कंट्रोल नहीं कर पाएंगे, किसके ऊपर? इशू एंड एजेंडा के ऊपर, डिसीजन मेकिंग के ऊपर, इसके इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के ऊपर, और इवन कोई भी पार्टी में ही अगर हम पार्टिसिपेट ना करें तो पार्टी के ऑर्गेनाइजेशन के ऊपर भी हम कंट्रोल नहीं कर सकते हैं, राइट? What Benjamin Barber talks about, he talks about that community and participation in democracy is very much important. He said that actual and a strong sense of citizenship evolved, when someone participate, right, in the public affair. So he said the actual and a strong sense of citizenship evolved or developed when there is a participation. Remember Aristotle, what he talks about? He talks about the participation and deliberation cultivates virtue, civic virtue. What is civic virtue? Civic virtue is, it's kind of obligation that everyone should participate in the public affair of the government, right? So that is Joel de Volpe and Benjamin Barber, right? Now come to the Carol Patman, what she talks about democracy, participatory democracy. So in her book called Participation and Democratic Theory, that is very important book by Carol Patman, and she said that the participation has educative role. When you participate, you got to know many things, right? So participation in politics has educative role, right? So the maximum participation at all level of politics is very much gives you socialization. It gives you social training, right? So representative democracy is not sufficient. It is only the participation, and maximum participation at each level of government gives you social training, right, for democracy, right? And this participation should take place at every layer of the government. Therefore, participatory democracy is an educative one, right? And educative in very widest sense, including both the psychological education, right, and also gaining of practice in democratic skills and procedure. पार्टिसिपेशन हमें क्या करता है? हमें साइकोलॉजिकली भी मजबूत बनाता है, राइट? और हमें वो बहुत कुछ सिखाता है जो डेमोक्रेटिक प्रैक्टिसेस में चल रही है, एंड दैट्स व्हाई दिस participation is very necessary, right? So participation in democracy is very important because participation has educative role, right? So existence of representative democracy at national level is not sufficient for democracy, right? So existence of representative democracy at national level, जैसे हमारे इंडिया में है representative democracy है, but it's not sufficient, right? We have local democracy where people participate, right? There is a Gram Sabha. What is Gram Sabha? In Gram Sabha, every member, is eligible to come and participate in the, affair of the local level, affair at the local level, right? So that is the major argument of Carol Patman, and Carol Patman is very, very important to put, right, to write in your paper, right? You should not forget Carol Patman's book name and his her argument, right? What she says that the participation at every level of government is very necessary, right? Even J.S. Mill, remember J.S. Mill, when I taught you J.S. Mill, he talks about participation, right? Carol Patman also talks about participation at every layers of government, and she said that the participation in government has educative role, right? So citizen gets social training for democracy, right? So therefore, it is a very much educative one, and educative in a very widest sense, including psychological education, right? And also we got to know the practical skills of democracy and its procedures, right? Now World Bank also recognized the participation of the people, right, in a democracy. So if you see World Bank idea of good governance that came in 1989, right? And the World Bank talks about accountability, rule of law, participation, transparency is a major component of good governance. And it talks about the participation of various community like civil society group, community-based group, voluntary organization, right? Along with common citizens in the public life and in the political life. So World Bank, idea of good governance has also talks about participatory democracy, right? So therefore, for a democratic polity to exist, it is necessary for participatory society to exist. जब तक participatory society exist नहीं करेगी, तब तक participatory democracy संभव नहीं है, right? That means a society where all political system has to be democratized, जहां पर लोगों को participation कराना है, okay? Because this participation will socialize, this participation in democracy give social training, right? And it will make stronger psychologically, and also it will give practical knowledge of democracy. Fine. So that is participatory democracy, right? So whenever those question come, you must write the name of Benjamin Barber, Joel Wolf, Carol Patman, Rousseau. Name you need to write everyone, but don't forget Carol Patman. If you forget Aristotle, Benjamin Barber, that doesn't matter. But Carol Patman is a major, right? So, but try to remember these names because it is very necessary. Put name so that you can get maximum score. Right? So let's see the question. Discuss idea of participatory democracy. Right? 250 words. Right? Tomorrow we will talk about deliberative democracy, and then we will start a new topic. For today, I'm stopping here. See you tomorrow.